Hi there and welcome to the Cockpit Tour. In this video we'll start from the login screen after you first downloaded and then started to run the platform. We'll have a look around and I'll show you how to navigate and how to move between applications. So once you've got everything up and running and you can visit your local host where the instance will be running, you can log in initially with the username of admin and the password with admin again. You can sign in and we'll be presented with all of the applications available to use. So this is the main home page of the cockpit. You can see that everything is completely composed of tiles and each tile here represents an application. Everything's categorized by its functionality. So we can see the development applications under the development tile group, design. As we scroll down, we'll see connectivity, administration, monitoring, tools, testing, deployment, security, the workflow tools, and then finally the system settings and any custom settings right at the bottom. You can open as many apps as you want at the same time. It's as simple as clicking on any of the tiles and it will open up the app in full screen. You can see when you open an app, it will add the app to the sidebar of the cockpit. To go back to the home screen at any time, simply click the Neptune icon in the top left. So if we open a few more apps here, we'll open the code snippet app, the documentation app, as well as the media library, for example. You can see we'll have 4 applications now in the side panel. If we click the burger icon, the burger menu icon at the top here, it will expand that and we can see the names of these applications rather than just the icons. We can click between these to quickly navigate between apps, and then we can go back home by clicking the Neptune icon. Most of the apps in the platform will open in this way, will open into the side panel and allow you to navigate between them within the cockpit. But some of the tools here are designed to open in a new tab. So, for example, the app designer, if we open it, you'll see that it will open in a new tab, and we can keep that open and switch back and forth between the tabs in our browser. You'll notice next to a number of these tools as well, there's a number. So here's 0, 0, 0. This represents the number of artifacts involved with that tool. So, for example, if I had 10 apps in my system, I would see a number 10 here next to the app designer. If I had 5 different npm modules, you'd see a number 5 here. At the top of the cockpit is the search bar, and this is probably going to be one of the most used tools in terms of navigating around quickly and finding everything you need. If we click it, it will drop down, and there are 3 main columns. On the left are all the services, so these are all the tools already available within all these tiles underneath the search, and they're all categorized in the same way. You can click on any of them here to open them straight up. So for example, the rules engine, I can open up and it will add itself into my list here on the left. This middle column here are the artifacts. Now, artifacts are anything that you personally make and name within the system. So currently, no artifacts are found. That's because we've got a brand new fresh installation and we haven't made anything yet. And then finally, on the right, we've got our favorites. This will be really useful as a number of these tools will be used a lot more than others. So you can see the app designer comes as a favorite by default, but we can easily add more favorites simply by clicking the star, and that will appear straight in our favorites library within the search bar. Currently, to close applications, all you need to do is refresh the cockpit, and that will close all of your active applications. Next up, we'll start to manage the users within the platform. To do so, we're going to visit the user tool. So we'll hit the search, we'll type user, we can see it here under the security subheading. If we open it up, we'll see that we've got a list which contains so far 1 user which is the admin of the system. And this is who we're currently logged in as, which you can see in the upper right-hand corner of the platform. Here, it's worth noting that you can change a number of key settings. So the theme from light to dark mode will change everything across the whole cockpit from light to dark mode. You can change the font sizing, whether or not words wrap around, so go off the screen or come to a new line, as well as being able to sign out or change your password here as well. Next to this is a question mark button, and this is actually the help button. This is always a really useful button as it will always provide contextual helpers depending on where you are. So here we're in the user tool, and if we click it, we'll see that it shows the user management information, which we can click on to find even more information about how to use this particular tool. If we go back to the home screen, we'll see now the whole cockpit is in dark mode, which is pretty cool. We'll come back into the user application here. The first thing we're going to do is actually create a new user. And we do that by hitting add in the top right. And that will allow us to enter all the key bits of information we need to generate a new user. So one of the first things is the username. We will call this user field worker 1. We'll set the language to English and we'll give it a password. In this case, we'll use our browser to securely generate that password for us. We can then save and display to go out of edit mode. And then if we were to close this down, we can see we've now got 2 users within our system, admin and field worker 1. And you can see that's represented by the number 2 here. Each user, when generated, will create its own unique ID. So this can always be used to programmatically interact with the user. By default, when you download the platform, it will come as a trial version, which will allow you to have a maximum of 2 users. So if we try and create another one now, and we try and save, we'll get an error saying we've reached the maximum number of registered users for the trial edition. If you are working within an enterprise platform which has a license, you are unlikely to run into this issue. One thing to note as well is that when you are in edit mode in any of the tools, you'll see on the left hand side of the cockpit there's a red marker here which represents this tool is open in edit mode. So if I close out of this, we'll discard all the data and we'll see we're back now in non-edit mode, so we lose that marker. Cool. Make sure you set up this user as we will be using it later in the tutorial. Alongside users are 2 other key points that tie in. We have users, we have roles, and we have groups. A user can be assigned a role, and a role can be assigned to a group, and users can be assigned to those groups too. So you have complete flexibility over assigning individual roles to individual users, or assigning one role to one group, and then assigning any number of users to that group. Let's do that now. Let's set up a role and set up a group. We'll assign the role to the group, and then we're going to put our field worker into the group. So in order to find our role tool, we'll search for role. See that under the security subheading. By default, we'll have no roles, so we'll need to create one. So we'll hit add. We'll give the role a name. Field workers. Here we can see all the different tabs for this role. So ACL is the access control list. This defines which of the cockpit tools this role is allowed to see. So you can change on an individual basis whether or not this particular role has access to view or edit any of the tools within the platform. So in this case, let's just apply all edit and save. We can then put this role back into display mode and close it down. So now we have a field worker role. As I explained before, we could come into our user tool and come into the field worker user, and then we can assign that role directly to them within the role tab. So we need to go into edit mode, and if we hit add, we'll be able to see that role and we can assign it directly to them here. But we're not going to do that. We're going to set it up slightly differently. We're going to create a group, assign the role to the group, and then assign the user to the group. This allows you to create more field workers, and then instead of having to assign the role to each individual user, you can assign the users to the group. So in order to do that, let's visit the group tool, which is under security for managing the user groups. And let's create a new one. Here, we'll call it the field worker group. And then we can assign the role to the group. So let's say the field worker role is assigned to this group, and then any users we add to this group will get any of the roles associated with the group. So here we'll come into user, we'll hit add, we can see our 2 users, and let's choose to add the field worker to this group. Nice. Now we can hit save and go into display mode. Close down that, and that's it, all set up. We've got our 2 users, the admin for controlling the whole system, and then we've set up a field worker who at the moment has the same all edit permissions as the admin, but this field worker has a unique ID which will be used later in the course. Next, we're going to set up a development package. This is a key best practice to do initially, as a number of artifacts you create within the system can be assigned to a development package. And the advantage of this is that when it comes to deployment, it's much faster to deploy a package and all the children of that package than having to search around and find all the individual components. It's essentially a group of artifacts. So let's find the tool by searching for package, and we'll see here development package. By default, we won't come with any, so let's add a new one. We'll give it a name, and we'll just call it eLearning. We can hit save and display. And now, as we go through the course, when we create new artifacts, we will assign them to this package so that if it came to deploying our eLearning content to another system, we can simply select the eLearning package and deploy that. Next, we'll introduce the media library. This is where you can store images, JavaScript files, videos, any file format you like, directly within the platform, so it can be easily referenced from applications or from launch pads. So let's search for media, and we'll see the media library. By default, it will come with a root folder. We can upload directly to the root folder, so let's import, and let's add in a background. We'll see that this will load the image straight in to the root folder and generate a link, which we can then visit here to view the image at its URL. So media, root, and then simple image background. Nice. We can also create folders within the media library. So here on the left, I can hit plus, and we'll create a new folder. Call it icons. Hit save. And then if we go into the icons folder, we can upload here as well. So let's import, and let's add in all the rest of the content which we need, which are these 4 icons. Great. And there we have it. Each of them uploaded with their own names and their own unique links. Now let's introduce the Cockpit Store. This is one of the more dynamic aspects of the cockpit, as it contains loads of up-to-date application building blocks which are regularly updated and published by not only Neptune but the community as well. Search for store. We'll see it here under development. When that opens up, we can see all of the application building blocks, which we can download straight into the platform. At the moment, there's 75, but this is a growing library. Now we're going to download 2 key application building blocks straight away, which we're going to need later in the course. The first one is the workflow inbox. Now this will look familiar based on the demonstration that we saw earlier. So we can click on that store item to open it up. We can see a description, an image, and then under the applications tab, we can see actually what's going to be downloaded into the system. So it's 2 applications here, the Planet 9 inbox and then the Planet 9 inbox tile, which is lives on top of the tile rather than what's opened when you click on the tile. So we can download these simply by hitting download, and that's done. We can close that down, and then we're also going to download one more thing, which is the Launchpad itself. The Launchpad comes as an application building block. It's regularly updated with new features and functionality. So here we can see this is the Launchpad for Planet 9, and this will download a Planet 9 Launchpad application. Cool. Now that's done, to prove a point, why don't we have a look at the applications currently within the platform. So to do that, we can search for application, and we'll see here we've got the application management tool under administration, and here we can see the 2 inbox applications we downloaded and the Launchpad we downloaded as well. So now we have 3 apps within our system. So now we've downloaded those applications, we can start to set up our tiles, our tile groups, and then our Launchpad, and then we can tie all of these things together with the media we uploaded to the media library to generate the shell, which we'll add our applications to as we build them later in the course. So let's get started. Let's start with creating the tiles that we're going to need. We'll search for tile, and here we can see the tile tool. So within this tile tool, we can create all the tiles which we'll add to a tile group, and then we'll add the tile group to our Launchpad. So we're going to create 5 different tiles. We can do that by hitting add, providing a name. So this is the system name for the tile. We're going to name it number 1 and then add equipment, and then we'll give it a title as well. And here we can see there's a contextual helper which will tell us what this title is relating to, and this title is what actually shows on the tile on top of the Launchpad. Cool, so that's all we need for now. We'll hit save, we can hit display, close down this tile. We can see here our brand new tile. I'm going to speed through and create tiles 2, 3, 4 and 5, and you can follow along yourself. So there we have it. We have our 5 tiles, numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, each with their own title as well. Now, in order to add these tiles to the Launchpad, we'll need to add the tiles into a tile group. And we can access the tile group tool, searching for tile and visiting tile group. Here we're going to create 3 groups, one being all the tiles within the system, and then 2 subgroups which will contain all the main apps, which are the inspection apps, and then the manager apps, which is the workflow inbox and the analytics app. So let's create those 3 tile groups now. I'm going to add. First one will be all apps, title being all applications. We'll hit save and then display. Close it down, And let's create our other two groups as well. So we know we need the main apps group, which will be the inspection management group. And then the manager apps too. So there we have it. We have our three groups. What we're going to do now is put the two subgroups into the parent group. So we're going to put the main apps group and the manager apps group into the all apps group. And this is quite simple. We simply open the all apps group. We come into the tile group tab. And here we can add groups to this group. So if we go into edit mode, we hit add, we can see our two other groups. We can select them both, add them in, and hit save. Cool. Now, within our two subgroups, let's add in the appropriate tiles for each group. So within the main apps group, we're going to add some tiles. So we visit the tile tab, we go into edit mode, press add, and in this group we're going to add the first three applications. Hit select, we'll save, and then display. And then for the manager apps, we're going to add the two remaining tiles. Here we'll go into edit mode, add, and then we're going to add the tiles 4 and 5. Cool. Now you'll notice that the tile groups have a role tab as well, which allows you to define which roles should be able to see this group. We'll set that up towards the end of the eLearning tutorials, as it's better to be able to have full visibility whilst building everything up and then locking down certain parts of it for individual users. So now we have our three groups, our all apps group containing our two subgroups. We can now create our launchpad and we can add the all apps group to it to bring everything into the launchpad. So let's search for the launchpad tool. And here we can create, design and maintain our launchpads. Let's press add to create a new one. We'll give it a name, eLearning Launchpad. Here we can assign a package. So this is our eLearning development package that we set up earlier. And then our Launchpad application is the Launchpad app that we actually downloaded from the store earlier. So here we click to search for the applications and we'll see that it recognizes that there's a Launchpad application here in our system. We'll select that as the foundation for the Launchpad. Give it a title as well. Again, is what's displayed to the user. And then we can add any custom logos and configure a number of additional settings down here. But we're going to leave everything pretty standard for now. Simply head to the tile group tab. And as mentioned before, here we'll add the all apps tile group to the launchpad. Now, if we save, we'll have the option of running the launchpad. When we run it, you can see it will open up a fresh, brand new launchpad with our tiles and our tile groups brought into it as well. So this will now recognize we have our all apps tile group, which contains our two sub tile groups, which contain the add equipment, view and edit equipment, and all the other tiles that we created as well. Brilliant. We can keep this open and simply refresh it whenever we make a change in the cockpit to see what we've done. So next, let's customize some of these tiles a bit. So let's head back once we go back into display mode. Let's head back to our tile tool and let's add the icons in that we uploaded to the media library into each tile. So for the add equipment tile, we'll go to the layout tab, we'll go into edit mode, and here we can add either a SAP icon, which all come built into the platform. There's over 2,000 of these, loads to choose from, or we can use anything from the media library. In this case, we'll head to the media library, open the icons folder, and we'll pick this construction icon. If we save and refresh our launchpad, we'll see that that will instantly apply, and there we have it. Cool. Let's do this for the rest of our tiles quickly. So for tile 2, go into layout, edit, we'll pick the repair icon, we'll save, display. For number 3, into the layout tab, we'll pick the tools icon, save and display. For the workflow inbox, we'll use one of the SAP icons. So here we'll come into the SAP icon library, search for inbox, use this one. And then also for the analytics app, we can use an SAP icon. Lovely. Save, display. And now if we refresh our launchpad, we'll have icons for all of our tiles, which looks much better. We can also add a background to the launchpad, since we've already uploaded that to the media library. So let's jump back into the launchpad tool, which we can find here. We'll jump into the layout tab for our eLearning launchpad. We'll go into edit mode, and then we'll add a new layout. We'll give it a name, call it the eLearning layout. If we save, then you'll see that this layout is added here. You can add any number of layouts that you want and easily switch between them, and then you can even choose between them when you're actually in the launchpad. You can change which layout you are using if you have more than one enabled for the launchpad. But we're going to stick with just this one. Let's just initially set the background image to the background that we uploaded to the media library. There we have it. We'll save that and put it in display mode for now. We'll come back later to customize a lot more of the launchpad. We can customize all the colors of the top bar. As you can see here, there's loads of presets for changing the drop-down menus, the sidebar colors. But for now, we'll keep it simple and we'll just use these images. We can come back, we can refresh our launchpad, and we'll see now everything is centralized, has a nice background image on, and is ready for us to build our applications to add into the tiles. Before we create our applications, we should set up the database tables and the connecting APIs that allow our applications to communicate with the database tables. By default, the platform comes with an embedded SQLite database. So if we go to the system settings, we'll see under database, the type is an SQLite embedded database. This means that we can get going straight away using the table tools within the platform without having to worry about connecting to an external database. Although the platform does support easy connections to a number of different database types, which you can see here in the drop-down: Postgres, SAP HANA, or a MS SQL server. We'll leave it as a standard SQLite database for now. So let's get started by searching for the table tools, and here we can see there are two. We have the table definition tool and the table browser tool. The table definition tool allows you to create tables defining their properties and the table browser tool allows you to view those tables and those properties and be able to add, remove, and adjust data within them. For the e-learning course, we're going to need 2 tables. So let's create them now. If we hit add, we can give the first one a name, which will be the equipment table. This will contain all of the equipment which will be generated and viewable within the platform. We can add that to our e-learning development package, and then we'll head to the properties tab. This is where we can define all the properties of the table. In this case, we need 10. So we can add them in here. We'll hit add 10 times, and then we can start to name each column. The first one will be name. We can add a description if we'd like, a default value, which will always be used if none's provided. We can change the type from any of these from this drop down, and we can select whether or not this should be a unique attribute or whether it should be nullable, which just means that it can be empty within the database. We're going to leave everything as standard for now and just add in all the names. Now we've got all our names, let's change some of them to be a more appropriate type. So the latitude and longitude are going to be decimals. So we'll change that to decimals here. The check update will be a timestamp without the time zone. Our checkup interval and days until check properties will be integers. Our assigned for checking is a true or false. So that will be a Boolean. And then there's one other interesting property here, which is the days until check. This property will be maintained automatically. So we don't need to worry about updating or managing this, as we're going to write a script which will automatically calculate this property for us. And we'll do that later in the course. For now, we're just going to set a few of these to nullable as well. So everything from that automatically maintained days until check to the bottom, we're going to set as nullable. PDF will store any PDF data that's being created and uploaded with the equipment. Assigned to is nullable because when the equipment is first created, it won't be assigned to anyone to check. The true or false can be nullable by default. And then the days until check will also be empty until the script has run and populated it with the number of days left until the piece of equipment does need checking. Everything else is a mandatory field, so we can leave them as empty here in the nullable column. We can save that. And that's it. We've created our first table. It's always possible to export and import these table definitions across different platforms. So if I were to export this, it would just give me a JSON file which contains this structure. I can then import the same sort of JSON file to automatically generate this structure for me, so I don't need to define this manually. Cool. So that's all done. We'll save and then display. Nice. Let's create our second table. So here we'll add, and this one will be called sections. We'll add that to the same package as well. This table will have 8 properties. And this will consist of an employee ID, employee name, part number. This will be the key between the 2 tables. So a piece of equipment has a part number, and when an inspection is created, that part number is used. And so there's always a one-to-one relationship between a piece of equipment and an assigned inspection. The status will either be assigned, submitted, complete, or rejected. The equipment barcode scan is where the barcode which has been scanned will be stored. We have the comments, where the comments will be stored. Attachments, where the picture will be stored. And signature, where the data from the signature will be stored as well. We can leave everything here as text apart from equipment barcode scan, which will just be an integer. We'll set these as nullable as well, as this information isn't captured when an inspection is first created. When an inspection is created, all of the rest of this is required. So a part number for what's the equipment that is being inspected. The status will be assigned initially, and then the employee ID and name will be created when the inspection is created as well. So you can save, display, close that down. Now we have our two tables ready to go. Next up, we can learn how to use the API definition tool. This allows you to create APIs which allow that communication between either internal databases or external data sources into the platform and into applications or server scripts that can be plugged in a number of places. But for now, let's just create them so we can use them later when we are building the applications. So we'll visit the API Designer tool. And here we can create the APIs for our tables. Now this tool has built-in functionality to automatically generate your standard CRUD methods for interacting with the table. So let's have a look at that and it will make a bit more sense. So we'll change the type from external to table definition. And then this will allow us to import a table. So here we can click import, table definition, and we can see the two tables that we just defined. So let's select equipment, and then automatically everything here will be generated. So the name will be set to API equipment. The package we have to assign manually, we'll set it to eLearning. And then here under operations, you can see that it's already made the get, the put, the post, and the delete methods ready to be used. For each of these methods, you can define the request and the response, which again will be automatically generated when you import using the import tool up here. So by default, the response will always contain a response body, which has the type definition of equipment. And we can have a look at those definitions here. You can see that there's the equipment definition with all the properties from our table. There's also an error response body as well. But you'll notice that this equipment properties, there are 15. And that's because there are some automatically generated properties when we created our table. So the ID, the created at, created by, the updated at, and updated by are all generated and maintained automatically by the platform. So we can leave everything as is. Once we've imported it, we can simply hit save. There's only one additional setting that we do need to enable. Under the General tab, if we scroll down, Use in App Designer and App Editor will allow this API to be visible from the App Designer where we're going to incorporate it later in the course. So we'll save that again, put it in display mode, and that's all done. We can leave that as is for now. We'll close it down and we'll do exactly the same thing but for our second table. So we'll add, change the type to table definition, import from the table inspections. We can see here there's our 4 methods. Hit save, display, and we can close that down. Now to get a better understanding of what we've just done, we can use the API client tool, which allows you to test APIs which you've made within the system. So here we'll search for API. We've got API client. And here we can see our 2 APIs with each of their operations. So our API for our inspections table and our API for our equipment table. Now, to show this in action, why don't we add just some example data to one of our tables? So to do that, we'll go to the table browser tool, where we'll be able to see our two tables. Let's go into the equipment table. We'll select all the properties and we'll run a query, which at the moment will just show our whole table, but with no data in. So if we hit edit, we can then add some data in. You can also import it, export it, as you can do with the table definitions. And let's just add a fake bit of equipment in here. So, power supply, fake latitude and longitude. You can even use the integrated date picker here in the table browser tool. The checkup interval we'll just set as 10 for now. We'll leave the days until check blank, assigned to blank, assigned for checking, we'll leave blank as well. We won't tick that, Boolean, and we'll leave PDF blank as well. So we can save that. And if we go back into display mode and we update, we'll see now we've got one record in our table. So now we can go back to the API client and we can actually use the get method to view the data that we've just input into that table. So let's go to the API equipment get method. Here you can see get. We click on it, it will open up the API client with this operation, and then we can hit send. And this will send the get call and retrieve the data. So here we can see an array with a single object inside. And this object contains all the data that we just put in, plus some null values for everything that we left blank. So this can be really useful for testing your APIs outside of applications. If you want to see whether or not it's working without having to build an interface and a whole app to check, you can simply use the API client to see whether or not you're seeing the data come through that you expect. Remember, with that second API that we created within the API definition or the API designer tool, we need to go back into it and we need to ensure that we've ticked that use in app designer and app editor setting. Otherwise, down the road, when we go and look for it within the app designer, we're not going to be able to see it. So there we have it, all done. Now, that's completed most of the setup that we need in order to actually get going and start building the first and second application to be able to view, manage, and create equipment and be able to assign it to individuals for inspection.